So there's another one that caused all this stir, and there's a new development on this one.
Hi. Impressive carrying skills, right? I got some Bud Lights for us. So I kept hearing about this thing called March Madness, and I thought we were all just having a hectic month, but it turns out it has something to do with sports. And I'm not sure exactly which sport, but either way, it's a cause to celebrate.
We don't need to see her anymore or him or whatever. Just go by the name Dylan, I guess. So Dylan Mulvaney is someone who was an actor who had this whole shtick of being super duper gay and couldn't make a living at it. And so Dylan Mulvaney put on a wig and some makeup, which Maybelline now gives him, and said, I am now Dylan Mulvaney, a girl, not even a woman, a girl. And he's celebrating his, however many days as a girl. So the transgender community doesn't even appreciate Dylan Mulvaney because this is just really taking it too far. And I suspect that some of them believe that he's effectively making a mockery of them. I know as a woman, it's making a mockery of us, and I don't appreciate it. And I think to all those Bud Light drinkers out there, of which many of you are, he was mocking you, and the company was mocking you. I don't actually drink beer. I'm more of a champagne girl myself. I think I had like a few Bud Lights many, many years ago. I was like, yeah, this is not for me. I don't really like it. I mean, I don't think it's a very good beer, but I'm also not a beer drinker. So I'll leave that one to the beer experts. What I would say is it was an insult. It showed how little they thought of their customer base. And so, yes, they got rid of their marketing heads, but it's not enough. It's just not enough because you're trying to go back to all these commercials and the country music and the horses and, the king of beer. The king of beer, you've probably seen the meme, is now the queen of beer. I mean, there's no way you can have a Bud Light or order a Bud Light at a restaurant right now and like not have these images come floating right back into your head. I don't care how much you like it. And everybody's switching to Coors Light or Miller Lite. And that's why their sales are way up and Bud sales are way down. Well, the new development is that somehow this company has managed to really take off everybody on both sides, right? So all the beer drinkers that were, fans of Bud Light or fans of Bud or fans of Anheuser-Busch. By the way, they got like hundreds of beers. So we need to do a deep dive on all their products so everybody knows what they've got in their stables, so to speak. But now there is a Chicago gay bar that's saying, absolutely not. We are done with Anheuser-Busch. It's called Two Bears Tavern Group. And this was a story that was reported over the weekend. They have said they are cutting off all Anheuser-Busch InBev products. It's AB InBev. It's a Brazilian company that bought Anheuser-Busch back in 2008 for $52 billion. So it's not even the St. Louis, Missouri American company that you might have thought about as in the past. Anyway, so they're getting rid of Busch Light, Bud Light, and Goose Island 312, which I guess they had there at their bar in Chicago. And the reason they're getting rid of these beers is because you'll recall on Thursday, the CEO, Brendan Whitworth, he came out and said, you know what, it's over. Like the breakup, it's happening. It was just one post, just one. It was just one night, right? We didn't do much. It was just one post, he said. And it was this marketing team and they're gone now. And so let's move on. Well, people can't move on. and the other people that heard him say that, they're like, whoa. And so the quote was that it was tantamount to saying that the rights and safety of transgender people are topics are worthy of debate, that they were not, he said. This is the owner of the bar. He goes on, you cannot claim to support the LGBTQIA plus community. Okay, full disclosure, I have no idea what the I, the A, and the plus now are. The bar is all upset because they're saying, you're not supporting us. And so now they're boycotting too. I mean, everybody's boycotting. I asked the former executive in charge of sales and distribution over there at Anheuser-Busch all about this. We had a long interview. Actually, that was this week. So if you get a chance, go check that out. That I believe was in Thursday's show. And it was very insightful. Some of the things he told me, for example, that the company made a mistake. They got too far away from their customers by, for example, moving out of Missouri, moving their U.S. headquarters out of Missouri into New York. In his estimation, that was a mistake. But most importantly, he said the real problem is they got so focused on this ESG nonsense, environmental social governance, that instead of being like in the old days, they were sort of, this is strange to say, but they were kind of like a private equity company because they go around and look for beer brands and then say, ooh, can we buy that and make it better? And that was sort of their focus, which returned a lot of value to shareholders. But instead, now they're like, yeah, we don't care about those shareholders. We just care about our ESG rating. Because, ESG is like what everybody's so preoccupied with. I want to play this sound for you and we can react to it. They've got sales that have declined 26% in the last week. Prior to that, it was down 21%. Prior to that, down 17%. And this all started with the whole Dylan Mulvaney thing. I think that's kind of a trend. I want your take.
No, I think it's definitely a trend. One of the things we're saying, this didn't necessarily start with the whole Dylan Mulvaney thing. Their problems are more fundamental. This actually started when instead of embodying shareholder capitalism, which Anheuser-Busch did for a long time. When I joined the company in 2011, I was told, hey, this is the world's largest private equity firm that happens to sell beer. And that's what we did. I mean, you saw the stock price increase dramatically from 2011 to 2016. And then starting in 17 and 18, they really adopted the stakeholder capitalism model, or as opposed to serving their shareholders, which is firefighters, doctors, police officers, have like 401ks and that have their pensions, and companies rely on these companies to produce great products and services. All of a sudden, they adopt this stakeholder capitalism model, which says that, hey, now all of a sudden you have to listen to activists and political organizations. And unfortunately, we're starting to see the manifestation of that play out, not in Anheuser-Busch, but other companies as well. And we believe that's bad for American capitalism and also American democracy.
Oh, sure. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think this ESG stuff is really distracting us from the values that this country was really based on, right, from the very beginning. And capitalism is such a critical part of our economic strength and our freedom. And I know that that's one of the things that you guys are really trying to invest in, right, companies. So, it goes on and you can listen to the whole thing. But my discussion with him was sort of like, what's happened, right, in America when we are more focused on whether or not we have certain quotas on our boards and we have, certain people marketing for us than we are concerned about the audience that we're selling to. I mean, that's pretty wild. And so I think that's happening a lot. And as we started this off, I was saying this is one of the reasons why we should be worried, because increasingly you're going to see that the antidote to that is really people feeling extremely, extremely frustrated. I think that the boycott that you've seen and the reaction and the anger towards Anheuser-Busch is emblematic of that, sort of this moment in time when people are like, enough already. You think about how willing all the quote unquote elites, from Hollywood stars to politicians to CEOs to anyone who has sort of a stake, right? Like as a traditional sort of stakeholder, they're so unwilling to call any of this out. Even people that, by the way, would not have been in their positions, like female athletes, if we suddenly said, okay, anybody who feels like a woman today, who's actually a biological man, you want to play basketball with Brittany Griner, here you go.
Everyone deserves the right to play. Everyone deserves the right to come here, sit in these seats and feel safe and not feel like there's a threat or they can't be who they are. Definitely will be speaking up against that legislation and those laws that are trying to be passed, for sure.
Yeah. So hate to tell you, Brittany, but you wouldn't make it in the NBA. You're in the WNBA, fine. I mean, even by the way, that is her voice. You're in the WNBA and you're very talented in the WNBA, but you'd be nowhere in the actual NBA. I mean, I just, again, I'm just being a realist, right? Like men and women are different and we can have babies and men cannot, right? It also means we have a different body composition. And the fact that we have to say this and that somehow that gets people triggered, I mean.
But it's so simple.
Enough. So this is what's so crazy. What also is wild to me about this whole story, when you think about it, is that going back to Anheuser-Busch, no one on Wall Street was willing to come out and say, like the day that it happened, that this would be bad news for the company. Why? Oh, because the ESG police would come after them. the ESG police. And the police chief is Mr. Larry Fink. Larry Fink, who runs BlackRock. It's the largest asset management company in the world. The biggest one in the world. I mean, it has like more than half the size of US GDP under management. So they make the rules. And they are saying they want to influence culture. They want to influence the environment through ESG scores, environmental social governance. And so for you to get a decent ESG score, you have to meet all these qualifications. I would like to know what Larry Fink's ESG score is, in all seriousness. What's the ESG score over at BlackRock? Because they're always on their private planes flying all around the world to try and do all these deals and scrutinize other people's ESG, right? I don't think they have a very good ESG score, but maybe they would say somehow they get credits. There's a whole credit thing going on, right? Like the carbon credits. That's a whole racket too. They get credits because they're policing everybody else. I mean, it's a rigged game. It's a rigged system. And what's kind of interesting to me is to see how Americans are calling it out. I wish they'd call it out on more fronts because, I mean, look at the Nike stuff, right? Nike, I'm not wearing any more Nike. Are you? I mean, I'm not buying any more Nike. Thank you very much. I'm not wearing what I have. In fact, the other day, I had a shirt I was going to put on and do the show, and it was kind of just an athletic shirt, and it was kind of fun because it's a little more casual here, right, than it would be in another setting. And I had forgotten it was Nike, and I looked over and I was like, oh, forget this. I took it off, threw it out. I just have no interest in Nike right now. The other thing that I've just cleansed myself of is all my Maybelline products, because I always wore Maybelline foundation and it had this SPF in it. And I wore Maybelline mascara and eyeliner. Well, actually it was a L'Oreal mascara, and I think that the company's owned by L'Oreal. That's what's kind of complicated. You actually have to look at the whole food chain here, because a lot of these brands are owned by bigger brands. And I'm not wearing any of that stuff anymore. I'd like to see a few more women out there in front of it. I know a lot of women here on this channel care really passionately about it like I do, but I'm sort of like, why isn't Nike's stock tanking? Somebody else said to me, a really smart investor, I told you about him, like the day this all happened, like I said, like nobody on Wall Street would actually say the obvious, which was that Bud Light sales were going to fall and the stock would trade down because they're all terrified. ESG police will come after him. But my investor friend said, you know what? I'm buying shares of Molson Coors under the ticker symbol TAP, T-A-P. And sure enough, he did. And what have you seen? But Molson Coors has gone way up because they're two beer brands. One is Coors Light. The other is Miller Lite. Those have both increased in sales in the latest week, 13% each. Well, Bud Light sales are down 26.1% each. So it looks like there was quite literally a migration over to a competitor. I know a lot of you don't love that company, but it is still a phenomenal example of, if you have that competition out there, and there's a lot of competition in the beer space, people will migrate. And so 13 plus 13 is 26. You got 0.1% that maybe has gone somewhere else, but it's a pretty direct correlation. So pretty fascinating. You've seen shares of TAP go up, shares of Bud have gone down. And they'll probably continue going down. I wouldn't even be terribly surprised if ultimately there's some restructuring overall at the company. I don't know how much longer they can really keep this particular brand. Bud Light will probably have to get repackaged in some way, shape, or form. It's unbelievable, just really, really unbelievable to see.